We do have an interpreter with us this evening, our friend Aldo Ruiz Barbero, who's helped us in the past. So I don't know if you'd like to go ahead and speak real quick, Aldo, and talk about the interpreting services we have for this meeting.
Buenas noches, bienvenidos a todos a la reunión. Las personas que deseen interpretación simultánea al idioma español van a ver aparecer en la parte inferior de su pantalla un icono en forma de globo terráqueo. Hagan clic en el globo y van a seleccionar el idioma Spanish o español y de esta manera tendrán acceso al canal de interpretación al español. Si nos acompañan a través de su teléfono, va a aparecer 2 o 3 puntos en la parte inferior de la pantalla. Hacen clic en los 3 puntos y va a aparecer ahí el globo terráqueo o va a decir interpretación. Clic en interpretación o tap en interpretación y escogen el canal en español. Muchas gracias. Ahí les estaremos esperando. Thank you, Barbie.
Thank you, Aldo. So anyone who needs the interpreting services, they are available on the app. David White, our city manager, is here. I'd love for him to introduce himself before we proceed with the reports for this evening. David, the floor.
Hello, yes. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So happy to be here. Your chair invited me to this meeting. Unfortunately, our schedules didn't align, so I didn't get, I'll come back to you at another meeting to talk and engage in more conversation with all of you. But I just want to say what a true joy and blessing it is to be in front of all of you this evening. I know all the great work that is being done through your board and also through Virginia Avenue Park. As I explained to the chair, I live no more than a block and a half away, and so get to see firsthand all the amazing work. And so I'm really looking forward to learning more about what your priorities and goals and focus is, so that certainly myself as your city manager can be aligned with where you want to head and how we can best collectively support our community and the city. So I'll stop there and just say welcome and thank you so much for inviting the chair.
Thank you so much, David, for being here tonight. We really appreciate it and hope you can stay as long as you are able. We might have some questions later on that we'd love to get your input on, but if you're not available, it's totally fine. We can ask some other staff and we'd love to have you come to our next meeting, which we'll talk about later, but tentatively will be the third week in March as we switch to a third Monday in March plan. So we have our agenda. Thank you for putting that up there, Carla. We're going to move forward with our official reports. So our first report will be from the Santa Monica Police Department.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Hi, thank you, Officer
Jessica Medina. So for the report, I was able to run the calls for service for the last 30 days, and it was a lot of disturbances and things like that. It seems to be that there's one individual in particular that is initiating these calls, and he's living out of his car at the park. He might be dealing with some mental issues. So I will have to contact the traffic enforcement to see if they can do any sort of enforcement for overnight parking. And then another issue that I noticed was a female Asian, which during my checks, I've actually met her. Her name is Julie. And when I met her, she wasn't, it seems like her issue is alcohol. So when I met her, she wasn't, she was sober. But I keep my eye on that, continue to do the periodic checks, as well as this past weekend, we conducted a pet and bike operation in the B3 area problems, which included Pico and Euclid, Pico and 22nd Street, and the crosswalk at Kansas and Cloverfield, which I think resulted in about 11 citations just on one officer. So it was a pretty good operation. And then myself and Officer Navarro have been periodically checking the park just to make sure that there's no disturbances. But again, I always tell people, please call. You guys are the ones that are there. And in order for us to fix the problem, we need some sort of like call history. And then the last thing is we received an email about receiving some sort of theft training. So I don't know if any of you guys know about that. If you guys do, please let us know, and then we can move forward with that. But all I know is that it was just an email that came through our office. And then I'll pass it on to Officer Navarro.
Just two things I was going to mention. Want to reiterate what Jessica was saying. So we're always doing checks of Virginia Park. So we do have some homeless that tend to circulate in the park. Just recently made a late night check of the park, maybe 8-ish, 9-ish. And the park really looked really improved. The people that we have been able to do some outreach for, looks like it's been very successful because there wasn't any encampments in the park, and there was really very few homeless to even count in the park, and that was later on in the evening. That combined with, so we've been getting some complaints from residents in the area about everyone has seen the encampments that happen on Centinela, which is more in Los Angeles because it's on the east side of the street. It looked like we started getting some more homeless subjects that were along Pico, closer to Centinela. People were a little nervous about whether there was some connection, whether it was growing westbound towards our city. Luckily, with some of the outreach that we've been doing, contacting them, all of that has been cleared out. So everything under the freeway connected to Centinela has, we don't have anybody that has to be down there. So I think that's a good thing for all the residents that were concerned about that. But otherwise, I think just it looks real positive signs for the park and for Pico Boulevard. And that's all that I have.
Thank you, Officers Medina and Navarro. Are there any board members who have questions for the officers? All right, seeing there are no questions, we'll go ahead and move on to the next report. I believe Carla has a report from the library.
Hi, everyone. Yes, Nancy Bender was not able to join us this evening, but they have several. She wanted to let you know about 3 upcoming events that are happening at the library. The Libraries and Gardens program that'll be happening on Saturday, February 11th. They have a retired librarian who's going to be doing a tour of outstanding library gardens. So that'll be really nice on Saturday, February 11th from 2 to 3:30. There will also be on Thursday, February 16th, a Black History Month film screening, the Gabby Douglas story. Gabby Douglas was the first Black gymnast to become an individual all-around champion and the first American to win gold in both the individual all-around and team competitions at the same Olympics. And then a really fun thing is going to be happening on Saturday, February 18th from 9 to 12. The Human Library returns to Santa Monica Public Library. You can check out a human book for a one-on-one 30-minute conversation about the challenges, stereotypes, and prejudices different people have experienced. And there's they are adding more shelves and adding new furniture to the library in the coming weeks. So highly recommend you take some time to go and pop into the library. And it's really great that they're open now on Saturdays. So it's very nice. So that's the library update. Oh, we are also working with the library, collaborating with them to have some VITA tax preparation in March and early April. So the flyer I'll be distributing that very soon. You'll see that. And so that's really good, as well as we will be doing financial literacy workshops in April for Financial Literacy Month. And we're collaborating with the library, VAP and the library collaborating on those.
Thank you, Carla. I just want to draw attention to the fact that Officer Medina did put into the chat her email in case anyone is interested in a theft training program. So I please make sure to check that out, and I encourage you, if you'd like to help organize a training, we can facilitate something like that. Thank you, Carla, for the report from the library. Are there any questions from board members about the library report? Okay.
It's the program at the library is gonna be for on Saturday for the children too. The programs that they are having.
Carla,
yes, some of those. Yes, some of those are on weekdays and some are on the weekend. Yeah.
Okay. So normally when we have our in-person meetings, there's a flyer that we distribute at our meeting that lists all of the programming for not just the library at Pico, but also the libraries throughout the city of Santa Monica. It's a little trickier to do online, but that hopefully will be available again once we start up our.
Yeah, and I'll be sure to send you the full list of library programs. Okay, so I'll add that and I'll send you the list of library programs.
Thanks, Carla. Are there any other questions from the board members about the library?
For Carla, how about email for the programs you mentioned, the tax and the tax service and financial literacy workshops? Are you gonna send us emails?
Yes, absolutely.
All
yes,
right, thank you.
We'll be able to. We're making appointments, 8 to 10 people per hour. They're going to have 8 to 10 volunteers.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, we're going to move on to the parent group liaison reports. First, we have the Parent Connection Group. Who do we have representing PCG this evening?
Hi, how are you? How's everybody this evening?
Nice to see you.
Thank you. It's good being here. So I just want to put a short disclaimer in before I go on to the most wonderful thing that we do every year. I'm also sitting on the executive board of Martin Luther King Coalition, and we just did our event, our annual event, which was held at John Adams Middle School in their brand new auditorium that seats 750 people. So in that, we have a whole year to plan out who we're going to honor, and they decided between SMC and a couple of other members, they decided to give honor to Dr. Shanita Weatherspoon. She is a psychologist over at Pepperdine University. She not only has her doctoral degree in psychology, but she's the head of that department, including in that. She also, it looks like I have a bleep taking place here. She also is in charge of the foster grandparent program, in which there is 150 seniors age 55 and over, and we go out to different schools and different districts and areas, and we provide mentoring and tutoring to those children. She's a big heavy hitter. She helped her daughter receive $400,000 first year in college in scholarships and grants, and her daughter came out with her first book, which is a children's book. And I'm going to show you this as well so you can see it. This is her children's book. I don't know if you can see it. It looked like my screen is freezing right now. And then there's also her son. He put out his book as well. It looked like, ask you to start your video. Okay, so did it blank out? Has stopped your video. Okay, so we're looking right now. Did it clear or did it pass?
We can see you now, but
you can now see.
Did not see the thing that you showed before.
Okay, so should I re-show it just based on time?
If you'd like to, you can show it while you're speaking.
Okay, so Dr. Shanita Weatherspoon was awarded the Light Committee Award, and it takes a whole year process to figure out who's going to be selected, and then there's a complete protocol in which MLK Coalition has to abide by in order in selecting an applicant for it. Due to her being the actual, not only the director of Pepperdine University Psychology Department, but she's also one of their professors. She also in charge of 150 foster grandparents, and it's 150 volunteers. We go out to different schools And separate from that, which is really, really interesting, her daughter has a book, a children's book, and her son also has a children's book. But this is the best thing that I really want to talk about. For Virginia Park, on February 25th, we are giving our annual Greens Festival. So it's not that it's been just 1 year, 2 years. We've been doing it exactly for 8 years. And it's going to be held along the side of not only the library area of it, but also directly behind the library. So yay, Carla has it right here. Thank you, Carla. Isn't it beautiful? Look at that. So we're going to have a live DJ. There's going to be Bobo. I have 2 different chefs that's coming in. I'm also a chef as well. So we have 2 different cooking demos. We're going to pass out different samples. There's going to be a few judges there, a couple of them from the SoFi Stadium. They're going to be judging. So they're not really in competition with each other, but there's something called presentation and plating. So they're going to be judged in accordance to that individually. We also, not only including that, at the Martin Luther King Coalition, there was a group of dancers that was there, beautiful African dancers called Lenawee Rose Dancers. So they're going to be participating. And this is the really big thing for the library. We have Malik Bookstore. It's going to be a mobile bookstore. They're well known within the Black areas of Los Angeles, Inglewood, Leimert Park, but they're going to also be doing books. And I believe there may be a book read, but we have to check with Carla to find out on that. So that's all that I have to say regarding February 25th. You guys come out, support us, be there for us. And we're using the farmers market green. So we're really encouraging people to purchase at our farmers market. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Are there any other events that are planned between now and middle of March, which is our next board meeting? Besides the Greens Festival?
Our Girls Rock, I believe, is coming up, Women's Month, or about Women's Month, or maybe April, I think it is. But yeah.
Thanks, Abenisha. Are there any questions for Andrea or the other representatives from PCG? Okay. Seeing there are none, thank you so much for the report. Looking forward to attending the event, the Greens Festival. For the next report we have, it will be from Familias Latinas Unidas, who will be speaking on behalf of FLU tonight.
Oh, hi, I can speak. Gloria, ¿quieres hablar o quieres que hable?
No, sí, mejor si usted lo hace, por favor.
Okay. Yeah, there was a conflict in meeting for our leadership, so they're in a different meeting. But let's see. To report, we met, the group, Familias Latinas Unidas, met with Mark, who was the consultant hired by the police department for to plan the strategic plan of the police department for the next 5 years. So we went ahead and we were in conversation, and a lot of things came out from the parents there that were very valuable. Lots of good input, and Mark took it all down and hopefully incorporated it as part of the strategic plan, so we can keep our community safe and our community engaged in collaboration and work with the police department. And then in terms of what's coming up, we're working on a Cesar Chavez event, and that will be April the 1st. And when we have final details, we'll go ahead and share the flyer and more information, but that's what the group is working on right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Irma. Are there any questions from board members about FLU's events or FLU generally? Okay. Seeing there are none, we're going to move forward with the Virginia Avenue Park program and operation highlights from Carla. Carla, what's going on with the park?
Well, things are moving right along at the park. We are busy working with PCG for Greens Festival, which is really exciting, and planning other upcoming events, which I'll talk about in just a minute. I did want to let you know that Liz Barron is back from being out for a little bit of time, so we're really glad to have her back. And then Dolores, who was promoted from being a specialist to a coordinator, really had to jump right in and follow, really take on a lot of responsibilities while Liz was out, but we're really glad that Liz is better and she's back at office today. Our programs continue to be fully enrolled, and we have nearly 50 kids on the waiting list for our programs. And so, as you know, we're really, there's great demand out there for the programs, and the kids have been doing great things. Staff have been doing a great job with all the different activities that they've been introducing the kids to, cooking and local field trips and things like that. I wanted to also let you, in terms of programs, the room rentals. We had to suspend room rentals because we did not have any facility attendants as needed. We have just now interviewed and have offered positions to a few. So as soon as they get onboarded, we'll be able to resume room rentals for the weekends. Those are for the birthday parties. And I know that's really a big thing. Facilities wise, I wanted to let you know that we're in the process of the Public Works is going to start working on the repairs to the splash pad. The splash pad, as you know, has lost several guns and needs some real, just like tuning up. And that's going to start probably in the beginning of March. But they assure me that it will be done by Memorial Day when the splash pad opens for the summer. And we know how popular that is. So that's very exciting. There are other, if you remember, a few months ago, we had a presentation from Mark Amaral about CDBG funds, block grant funding for improvements at the park. So we are also in the process of replacing the flooring in the fitness gym in the Park Center building. So that'll be happening this spring, as well as we're finally going to address the drainage issues that we have with the Teen Center courtyard. As you know, now whenever even one drop of rain comes in, that courtyard seems to flood. And so we have a sump pump and everything like that. So we're really glad that we're going to be able to address those issues. So, all right, so that's good. Also, with events that are coming up, we have Greens Festival, as you heard about, which is really great, very exciting. We have the PCG has put together such a great lineup of performers, as well as book readings. And it's just it's going to be a very lovely day. Hope you make it out. Really hope so. And we'll have KJLH's, thanks to Ebenisha, she got us KJLH's DJ Bobo, and then we also have had we have a wonderful speaker Bess Kep, who's going to be performing and has a new book out. So it's going to be quite nice, along with all the great chefs that Andrina found for us. The other big thing we're working on, the library and VAP, we're working very closely on the Arts and Literacy Festival. We have our big kickoff for that tomorrow. Let me just show you the first draft of the flyer so you can get as excited as I am about it. The theme is going to be, the theme is construction. So ready, set, build, and you can see it's going to be a fun day. We have lots of ideas of what we want to have happen on that day. So you'll be able to participate. That'll be Saturday, April 29th. And then just wanted to give you a little bit of a update on the trades intern program. We are looking that Public Works does want to continue and is going to propose to continue supporting the trades interns. And we're looking and hoping to start to do a recruitment for trades interns in May, June, so that once the new fiscal year starts, that we'll be ready to onboard. Because I know there are a number of our community members that really are interested in this program, and we really want to get them on board. So that's all on that I have for the park. I don't know if anybody had questions about park programs, and then I would give you a quick kitchen update.
Carla, I have a question. How many kids did you say are on the waiting list for programming?
50. There's 50 kids.
And is that because we're short-staffed, or what's going on?
Yes. So we don't have enough. We don't have enough staff. But actually, Irma, I can only take questions from board members at this moment.
Oh, God.
I'm so sorry.
Apologies.
No problem. Okay, so I'll go to kitchen. Do any board members have any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Are there any board members who have questions? No.
Okay.
Oh,
yes, Arcadio.
Arcadio.
Yeah, that's a very good question that actually come up regarding not enough support at the park. The person in charge of providing those supports to the whole community, is he or she aware that the park requires more support in order to run those programs? I understand we already moving forward. The pandemic, it's gone. So now we need to enforce and provide those services to the community and the family that needs support. Is the schedule or is the hours is being arranged to make more impact to the community, not reduce the hours? And I heard that you have a multiple sign-ups or enrollment in the program. So that means you need more staff, need more hours, and need more support. So by looking at that one as part of the program, in order to run the program properly and accuracy, we need a support from the topper level. So that way the park will run smoothly and provide them all the support. You address that one with the person that needs to take those kind of decision?
I think Arcadio, thank you for that point. I'm not sure if Carla can address it now, but we are going to be talking about that later on in the agenda, because every year we do look at like what can we do in advance of these budget meetings. So it's part of what we do. We've done, at least since I've served on the board since 2015. So definitely I think keep this in mind. In 2020, before there were the budget cuts, we had a similar board meeting like this where we talked about our worries because of the shrinkage that had to happen for the budget and kind of how that would affect the park. So we did come up with a plan for that. So I want to thank you for that comment. I'm not sure if Carla can address it now or even the city manager, but we are going to be talking about what we can do as a board later on in discussion item 9A.
Yeah, so just to co-sign what Barbie was saying, this is an opportunity for you to, you've already agendized putting a letter together in support of this. The park has had to take, like the entire city, had great cuts budget-wise, and it really did impact our ability to provide programming. And that has been the hardest thing for all of us, because, why are we here? Is to provide programs and services for our youth and families. So that is that is something that we're really trying the best to stretch, but we also have other considerations, like we also have the AI on child protection, which has certain expectations on how many staff we use, so that we really need to be aware and be cognizant of that to ensure that the safety of the children. So we can't over enroll without being sure that we have enough coverage for the staff.
Yeah, there are new roles that have been implemented. I see that Dr. Compton has a question. Is there someone else who also had raised their hand? I just want to make sure we...
Ebenesia.
And Gloria.
Dr. Compton first, then Gloria, and then Ebenesia, because I saw Gloria visually raise her hand.
Thank you, Barbie. Hi, everyone. I had two comments. One, I definitely appreciate the parent groups who are able to bring like cultural programming to the participants in the programs, to kind of take some of the burden off staff as parent volunteers. So I definitely want to appreciate the parent programs, the parents, Parent Connection Group, Familias Latinas Unidas, for putting on programs for 8 consecutive years and things of that nature. So that was my first comment. Salute Virginia Avenue Park for knowing how to work with parent groups and empower them, because it enriches our whole community. The second thing was, I know there's always a waiting list for like elementary programs. I don't know that it's ever been like at 40, but even when my son, who's a senior, was like in elementary at Edison, I remember a waiting list. I was so grateful to be able to get in there. But that's always been something, even on this board for several years, that we need to look at if possible. And then of course the Teen Center. I'm always wanting to advocate for the Teen Center staffing. So I do look forward, Carla, to knowing how we can advocate as a board. And I'm glad it's an agenda item.
Thank you, Dr. Compton. I believe Gloria was next, and then Avanisha.
Yeah, well, it's almost the same question. So we as parents very happy that the programs coming back again, but yeah, that's our question. Why is the waiting list for the kids?
Yeah. Thank you, Gloria. I'm making a note of that. And then Avanisha, did you also have a question or comment?
Yeah, mine was in alignment with the gentleman and Shirley. I definitely am curious as to staffing for the teen programming. I know we don't have a teen center anymore, and that's a big concern with me, especially with all the things that's going on within the community with the teens and the lack of, you know, places for them to go possibly. So yeah, I was concerned on whether we were going to be able to put the teen center programming in our letter.
Thank you, Avanisha. We'll make sure to readdress that down in the other agenda item as well. Are there any other comments or questions from board members about Carla's report with respect to program updates for the park? Again, anything regarding advocacy, we're going to talk about later, but if there's questions about the things that she just spoke about, we can talk about them now. All right, seeing there are none. Carla, did you have additional information regarding the kitchen to update us on?
Yes, Golden State isn't here this evening because there hasn't been much progress going. As you know, Golden State is the operator that is going to be operating the kitchen once it is constructed. That basically the same, we're still in a holding pattern with the construction. The plans are at plan check and they're going for their final review at the LA County Health Department. As soon as we receive the comments from plan check, and if they are not extensive, then the Public Works will be able to then put out the request for proposal, the request for bids for the construction so that we can start moving on the construction. In the meantime, Golden State has been working on continuing to develop and expand the curriculum that they will be providing for all of the startups. And they will be, what partnerships they will be doing for the economic development pieces, like the business development. They're negotiating with New Economics for Women and other groups to provide those. So it's real exciting. And I know that the buzz is really out there among the community because whenever I'm around, people come up and ask me about it. So I'm real excited. I hope that 2023 is going to be the year.
Carla, do we know if we'll have things available for like tours maybe during the Arts and Literacy Festival, or if it'll be usable way by then?
I don't think it's going to be. I'm hoping for groundbreaking June. Okay. I'm still holding out for groundbreaking in June.
Okay. I just thought I'd ask, throw it out there as a possibility.
Yeah, but I'm glad to show people the plans, and I can bring you the plans again next time if you like.
That would be fun, maybe for us to display at the Arts and Literacy Festival if we could have like a little booth or kiosk.
That's a great idea. Okay, I'll do that. Yeah,
just letting people know we're getting there, especially those who might want to use the kitchen and these sort of micro enterprises that we're trying to cultivate. I think that could be a great.
I can do that for Greens Festival too, guys.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'll add that to, that's a really great idea. I'll have some made up.
Yeah, I'm sure. And then we could probably repurpose it and reuse it for, you know, until it falls apart or until it's open.
Until it's open.
Yeah. Are there any questions from the board about the kitchen? Okay. Seeing there are none, thank you everyone for your reports. We're going to move on to agenda item 2, the consent calendar. We are going to be looking at our minutes from last month. Did all the board members have a chance to look at those? If not, you can click on the hyperlink in the agenda that was circulated. Just to take a quick look at those, we can entertain a motion to approve the minutes. There's a board member who'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes. We can do that.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Oh, right. Gloria's moving to approve the minutes. Is there a second? All right. Ellen is seconding. All those in favor? Okay, right. Anyone opposed? No. All right. The minutes are approved from our last meeting. Thank you. All right, now we're on to the meaty part of our meeting. We have our discussion and possible action to draft a letter of support for reinstatement of pre-pandemic funding. So to give sort of everyone just a general overview of what that means, in prior years, like I'd mentioned earlier, we tend to meet as a board to talk again about our priorities, see where things are, how our community is being served. There are things that we would like to have more support for. This gives us an opportunity to discuss it as a board and with the community that we represent so that we can put together the best letters possible and advocate for that with City Council. What we do then is we usually allow for time for public comment to hear from those who normally are physically present with us in the actual meeting. Everyone is allowed 3 minutes. Anyone who likes to speak can speak for 3 minutes. And then we discuss it as a board and we can, go on for however long we'd like until we come to some sort of decision about what next steps we'd like to take in advance of the budget meetings. In the past, we have drafted a letter. I remember putting together something in our individual capacity before the 2020 budget meeting that was held right in like the very beginning of the pandemic. We've also put together letters that are drafted by the secretary and then signed by the chair and the vice chair in the past, but that's only when we've had time as a board to put together something that we all agree on, and that can be then drafted and circulated and approved as a board for the general points. We also try to talk to the other community members, so if there's concerns that we're bringing up that they would like to add their voices or stories to, we can sort of hear that now to help inform whatever decision we would like to take as a board. So with that, I'd like to open up the floor for general public comment. If there's anyone on the board, anyone in this space who is not a board member but would like to share some thoughts on this, you have 3 minutes that you can speak. I want to try to do it as orderly as possible. And I want to make sure that anyone who would like to speak can speak. So I think the best way to do that would be to raise your hand. And then once we call on your name, we'll lower your hand. But if you've not been called on yet, then to keep your hand raised so we can make sure to call on you. We do have staff here if they would like to respond or have thoughts about this, and we can discuss it. Otherwise, it would just be 3 minutes for each general public member, and then the board will discuss sort of what to do moving forward. Are there any questions from the board before we proceed? Okay. Is that your hand raised, Dr. Compton, or no? No, okay. All right. All right, so right now I see, let's see here. Looks like we have Hajar and Angel, did you want to speak as well? Yeah, okay. All right, so first I'm going to go.
I didn't realize I was given a high five.
That's right, I couldn't tell.
I meant to raise
I think I saw your hand raised earlier, actually, but I wasn't sure if it was a hand raise or a high five. So feel free, go ahead and we'll start the timer. I guess I'll go ahead and time. Or Carla, would you like to time?
Yeah, I'll take care of that.
Okay, thank you. We'll let you know when the 3 minutes is up. And okay, I see all these hands raised. Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Okay,
so,
thank you very much.
We're doing actually first, and then Hajar, and then I think I saw Irma, and then Anahara.
Great, thank you so much. Just ensuring you can hear me. And I apologize, I'm not on video. My tech isn't great. It freezes sometimes. I just want to first and foremost thank the VAPA board for your leadership and all that you've done throughout the years for Virginia Avenue Park and the Pico neighborhood, for Familias Latinas Unidas and PCG, for your advocacy, for your continued leadership, and the role that you play as parent volunteers, extremely important. I wanted to just support this item because I'm a lifelong Pico neighborhood resident. You know, I grew up going to VAP after school. It saved my life, literally. So I wanted to offer my support any way that I could. I'm currently a professor at LMU for Cal State Dominguez Hills. If I can support this letter and provide any data, I'd be happy to do that. I plan on submitting a letter on my own. I'm happy to see David is here. I want to direct some comments to David. Grateful to see you. Last time we spoke was when you first onboarded. I think what we did then was try to paint a picture for you of some of the work and some of the advocacy we've done historically here in the Pico neighborhood for the Black and Latino community. Haven't seen you since. It's a bit unfortunate, but I know things have been crazy. Like I said, I grew up attending Virginia Avenue Park. I went to my first Dodger game because of Virginia Avenue Park. I went to my first Disneyland trip because of Virginia Avenue Park. My parents were immigrants, came to this community in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I got introduced to Virginia Avenue Park in the 90s, and it became a home away from home. Unfortunately, during that time, violence really plagued our communities. There was gangs, activities. The Pico neighborhood saw its share of losses, and especially for our youth. It was a tough time, you know, and that was one of the reasons that I went back to VAP and became a staff member and helped Carla open the park in 2006 and the teen center. And, you know, we did a lot of great programming. While I was a staff there, unfortunately, we had some losses. We had young people that were killed at Virginia Avenue Park. And it's something that still shakes me up to my core to this day. And I say that to say, you know, hearing about budget cuts, and I understand budget cuts across the board. I was a city staff member when budget cuts happened. I'm no longer with the city in the same capacity as a full-time staff member. And it was tough, but I also know the struggles in the Pico neighborhood. I know that the Pico neighborhood is the most disenfranchised part of Santa Monica, and it has been historically, especially when the pandemic hit. You know, I saw firsthand how our African-American Latino community residents were hit the hardest, especially our undocumented communities. They didn't have access to federal resources. So we were struggling, we're still struggling. And in our conversations with leadership, the promise was that, you know, the first opportunity there was to reinstate programming, that would happen. So we're still sort of waiting on that promise. And we just want to remind you that we haven't forgotten about that. Historically, it's unfortunate.
That's,
you know,
3 minutes, sorry.
The city's been very reactionary. We hope that you be proactive and, you know, reinstate funds as soon as you can for our community. And I'm here as a partner, however I can help, whenever I can help David and to the VAP board. Thank you.
Thank you. I apologize, I have to cut you off, but thank you for your comments, and you know, encourage you in your individual capacity to be able to advocate for the community and your experience as a member. Next up, we have, where'd she go? I think Hajar, yes. Ask and mute. There we go.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Virginia Avenue Park Advisory Board and Carla, for all that you do in our community. I definitely support getting more funding to get more staff. I highly encourage us to hire diverse staff and put them in different positions throughout the park. I highly encourage us to keep in mind that a lot of our communities of quote unquote color are divided, and maybe we should think about having more programming that connects us. You know, we need to have more work around anti-Black racism that occurs at the park from staff, and also that affects our children. I strongly encourage us to really concentrate on that. I am a strong advocate for community coalition building and have been since I was born. But I know in light of what leaked from the LA City Council, as a descendant of enslaved Americans in this country and American Indians, I know that the real work is still to be done because a lot of people are scrapping for what they can get themselves. I'm a true proponent of whoever is for me, I'm for them. And so there's a lot of fake coalition building going around and always has been, but I'm for the real. And we definitely can see through the fake, and we understand that people are only out to get theirs, but I strongly encourage us to be genuine in our fight for what we all need for our communities, because if not, we're all just being pitted against each other.
Thank you for those comments. Hajar, and I encourage you as well to advocate for the park and the community in your individual capacity.
Most definitely, always.
Thank you. Next, Irma.
Yes, my name is Irma Carranza, and I also live here in the Pico neighborhood, just actually about 2 blocks away from the park. And I, along with other leaders here on this call, did a lot of work and have done a lot of work to change and make Virginia Avenue Park what it is today. Yeah, from removing the police substation and using that space as a resource space, where we once had different organizations, nonprofits there to help our community, because we knew that that was what was needed, not for our community to be policed. Yes. And so we've done a lot of work. We organized in the early 2000s. Yeah, we went to city council meetings. We went to school board meetings. We did all of that to try to go ahead and connect the institutions and have people do better, have the institutions do better, and those people in those institutions do better. I hope that we don't get into the place of starting to see programs disappear. And, you know, I just don't think that Black and brown people need to be organizing all the time just to get something. You know, I really believed we had gotten to the place where we no longer had to do that. Yes. And that things were happening, people were doing right by us. And now we're seeing programs disappear, services disappear. And now parents are calling myself and others for help, where we before would say, let's go to the park and there's all these different services, all these different people that can help you. Now we're kind of seeing that lacking. Yeah. And when we start seeing that, then we'll see the ripple effect of that in the community, right? We need to be supporting families so that families can support their children, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm hoping that you, city manager, you know, will do right by our community, and that we don't have to go over there like we had to go in the early 2000s or any of that. We put in the work. Yeah, we don't beg anyone to do anything. We have the solutions for our community. We know what's needed, but leadership makes a decision and has the money to make things happen. Yeah, but we know what's needed. And so we hope that you connect with us as you're making decisions that impact our community in any way. And yeah, I hope that we do see you in the community. Yeah, this is the hub. Virginia Park is the hub of the community. Yeah, that's what we made it. That's what we spent countless hours for many years to happen. And we'd like to see that continue and keep flourishing and keep providing support and space and people to gather and people who are in need to come to. Right now, we're dealing with our immigrant community that was defrauded through a Ponzi scheme. Yeah. And we're like, where was anyone to kind of where they could go and see where they can get assistance? Yeah. And now we're having to deal with the aftermath of that alone in the community. Anyways, thank you for the time.
Thank you, Irma. And I also encourage you to advocate, in your individual capacity and the other leadership that you've done. Clearly you have experience doing this. So I encourage you to continue to do that. Next we have Anahara, and after that, I believe Andrina.
Hey, Barbie, I'm not sure which Anahara.
I know, you both have your hands raised. Okay, so
I believe my daughter had it up before I did.
All right, so Junior, is that how that works? I'm not sure.
That's fine for the purposes of this meeting. That's totally fine.
And then former councilwoman, Anahara.
Yeah. Hey, so again, my name is Anahara G, middle initial, just for the distinction. And I speak completely as a community member. Today, I am a full-time city staff person, but I'm really just sharing my specific opinions based on my work and experience here in this community. I want to echo, all of the different sentiments about the beauty of what the park is, about what it is that it was created by design to be the hub, to be the place of resource, of refuge for many people in our community. And we're super grateful for the leadership that exists there. Carla is absolutely amazing in allowing that space to really belong to community members. And I specifically want to talk to just the language that was used in saying, creating, basically bringing staff and program back to pre-COVID level. Based on what it is that I see, I think we need more than what pre-COVID level existed. I think part of what I would like is kind of the nature, the vibe, the community that existed pre-COVID, but I would like many more resources. What we see out in our community is not just more frequent need, but much more intense need. There's a lot of people in our community, I believe strongly that it is an equity issue coming out of COVID. We saw health outcomes affect our communities differently, and we are continuing to see behavioral outcomes affect especially our young people differently. There is a much more intense need. And so we don't need just early 2020 resources. We need, post-pandemic level resources and staff and creativity and collaboration. And I think if any community in the city could do it, it's our community. And I want to echo specifically Irma's sentiment in saying, come to the community, talk to the parents that are dealing with the children that are going through many different things, feeling like they're on their own. And you can hear about the solutions and things that people are doing and piecemealing together that are in desperate need of a system, of resources, of leadership to back the actions that are already happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Anaji, for that. And thank you for being here in your personal capacity and for sharing your experience. And to whatever extent you're able to advocate, thank you for adding your voice to the conversation. And Anahara, former councilwoman.
Well, thank you to everyone for being here today. City Manager, I also thank you for taking your time to listen to all of us present. I just want to, don't want to give my whole history because I think that everybody has already stated that before me. My capacity as a former city council in trying to cut back all of the services, especially at Virginia Avenue Park, was probably one of the hardest decisions that I ever had to make. Knowing that instead of cutting it, we should have been advancing more and adding more services to the park. I'm going to have to be very frank. And I'm going to have to say that as a community member, I don't want our community to be utilized as a tool, as a token of being a multicultural piece We are who we are. We know who we are. We don't need any validation from anyone. What we need is assistance in order for us to be able to continue to work and for us to be able to continue to have our children live, be successful, and have everything, every opportunity that everyone else has. That is all that we're asking. Like Irma said, yes, we're not used to begging, but yet we are very, very used to going over and requesting all of the assistance that is needed for our children, for our youth, for our parents. And like Irma said, you know, we are not stepping back. We continue to be here, even with COVID, behind the scenes. We are still here trying to assist absolutely every single person that needs our help. We didn't step back. We didn't stay in our homes. We went out there. We tried to assist our elderly. We tried to assist families in need because they didn't have any food. With our assistance, the city was able to create different services and provide different services during the pandemic. It was because our hard work, because we stepped up and we haven't stopped. And we will continue to do that. And we will continue to advocate, and we will continue to have everyone listen to us as much as we possibly can, because we cannot take a step back. We cannot go back, and we cannot be silenced. So I am going to ask that you please listen to our pleas, listen to us. There are many needs, many, many needs. And the people that speak the hardest and the people that are more spoken should not be the only ones that should be listened to. Like Irma said, we have stepped in, we have been working, we have been doing everything. There shouldn't be any need for us to come back to you and say, please, please. No, you should know already what our needs are. They're all out there. They're written. It's not something that is just going to, you know, like we're trying to say that it's real, but no, it is real. You have it in writing. Go ahead and pull it out. And please continue to help us beyond what we had in, prior to COVID. Thank you.
Thank you, former Councilwoman. Thank you for speaking here tonight and your experience and being in the community and your leadership on these issues. I believe next we have Andrina and then Liz Cruz.
Yes, I just want to say thank you so much for Virginia Avenue Park for being in existence, the advisory board. And I want to say thank you personally to Carla. She has done and weathered the storm before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and even after now. She has such elasticity. She has that bounce back power that we just love the most. So Ana, every time you speak, every time I'm in the room with you and I'm in the Zoom room with you right now, I always feel the heaviness of your heart. So I have to say, I want to ditto many things that Ana Jara has said, the mom, Ana. I want to say the same. You know, I can talk about the same as far as my grandmother growing up in the city of Santa Monica near Main Street, and she dealt with the KKK. I can bring up a lot of stuff, but one thing I have to say, when I took on the position as a chair of PCG, and we're under great reconstruction right now, is I'm looking forward, I'm putting this out forward right now. I'm looking forward to see many Black contractors finally being accepting to not only help assist in the building of the kitchen at the Thelma Terry, because Thelma wasn't white, Thelma was a Black woman. There's also Nat Trevis, who was also part of one of the people that did the designs of Virginia Avenue Park, who was and still is a Black man. So what I'm saying is, between my 4 kids coming into Virginia Avenue Park, there was Lewis, we have Michael, and we also had Joe, who, you know, rest in peace, passed away. We had strong Black men that was present, but shortly later, you know, there was the layoffs, and I understand, we all did understand the layoffs, but I'm looking forward to see an equal racial balance of permanent Black staffing inside the office. We need desperately permanent, not temporary, not part-time, not on call. We need permanent Black staffing. I salute Dr. Shirley Compton. And, you know, I'm going to say this, even when I spoke of Dr. Weatherspoon, they're of the same sorority. It appears always when we hear the different Blacks within Santa Monica, it seems like they have to go over and above. And these are excellent Black women that are proud who they are. But why is it we have to get a doctorate's degree behind our name in order to be heard? Many of the Black women and men within Santa Monica have done great works, but yet when we look at the average person who does not have that doctorate's degree, but they may have 2 other associate's degree or BS degree, still, we don't see them within the staffing of Virginia Park. We need that presence. We need it in the library. We need it playing with the kids. We have only one, and then it comes and goes, and there's reasons behind hierarchy. And let's change the hierarchy. Let's change the credentials of what qualifies you to be an actual staff member at Virginia Avenue Park. My goals is to get the city of Santa Monica, this is the first and last time I'm going to say this, my goals is to get the city of Santa Monica the way it was way before the Santa Monica 10 freeway was built. I will be actively and have actively already been going through different storefronts and talking with different business owners and talking with different restaurants to get Black recipes on the maps, to get different different white business owners to say, you know what, do you want to open up a second store? Because the Blacks that I do know cannot get a second store, can't even get one store open or one business open within Santa Monica. So I had to go to the left and I had to approach different women and men along the lines of
3 minutes. Sorry, Andrea.
So, you know, my heart is very strong, is very full, but we need to make it, like Hajar said, diverse. Please push that forward. We need it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Andrea, for what you said and for your leadership on PCG and for advocating. Hope to have your continued leadership on these issues as we move forward. The last person with their hand raised is Liz Cruz. If there's no one else who raises their hands after hers, then we'll be closing public comment for this agenda item.
Thank you, Barbie. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, FLU and PCG and Virginia Avenue Park Advisory Board and Carla for putting this on the agenda for this evening. This has definitely been a topic of concern. I'm Liz Cruz, formerly president, vice president, played many roles in the Virginia Avenue Park Advisory Board, also a licensed clinical social worker. I'm a provider in the community in Santa Monica, also part of FLU, also a community member. So I'm really speaking from the different roles and capacities that I play in the community, having seen the shift and changes post the pandemic, as many of the people who've already shared, like Anna, Irma, Adrena and others, the intensity in which we're seeing the needs in the community are there. And it's really disheartening to have seen so many cuts throughout or post the pandemic and the impact that it had on our families. Just hearing about some of the programming that Carla shared earlier about what's being done at the park and at the library, I'm happy to see some movement and some progress, but I feel like we need to definitely intensify and get creative in how we provide services to our kids, because that's really the preventative piece. We're losing a lot of kids right now with substance use, with the opioids and fentanyl and all of those different substances, because there is nowhere where our kids can go after school. There's a very limited capacity, and the different programs that we do have available, whether it's at the park or PAL, Boys and Girls Club, and what else do we have available for our families? Our families have to work that much more harder, especially with inflation. There's just so much happening in our external world that I feel like the park has always been, as Anna had mentioned, or Irma, a safe haven in which there was resources. We used to have what do you call it? Or Medi-Cal, I can't remember the name of the office at the moment, would be there to alleviate access for some of our families to be able to address things such as food stamps or things of that sort, having also employment like Claire Matrix, or not Claire Matrix, I'm losing right now the names of certain that we had, but there was a variety of agencies that Irma had mentioned earlier that would really be a connection. And so I feel like being able to have this discussion and really be mindful and having conversations with our parent groups and our youth to figure out what and how we can get creative and bringing back funding and services to build community, to help instill hope, because many of the kids that I'm working with in a mental health capacity are lacking motivation, are lacking connection, are lacking resources out after school. And so there's not much available to them. Some of them are struggling with interpersonal skills. And so there's not also employment opportunities for them to be able to kind of build those skill set that can really help them and set them up for success. Our scholarship program that we have at the park is really important. And so how do we get those kids? By getting them involved in our park from elementary to middle to high school. And I feel like there is no fluidness, if you will, in terms of services at this point, because there is no teen center, there is no teen center staff really manning and creating opportunity and connection in terms of programming and arts classes and things of that sort. And so I really hope that this conversation continues, and in any way that I can support to ensure that our parents don't have to be of concern to of their kids, because there's conversation and we're prioritizing the mental health and well-being of our kids as we move forward, especially now because the effects of COVID and the pandemic have really, we're really seeing it, and there's very limited resources, and the people that are doing what they can, it's not enough. It really takes it from a systemic level and from a macro level to really figure out how else can other people come together so that it's not all at the park, but it could be spread out throughout the community to really ensure that kids and families feel support, feel heard, and feel connected. And as people mentioned earlier, also have diverse staff providing these services and really feel that there's movement and they feel important in this work. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you for your leadership in the past years and for being with us again here tonight to talk about what you're seeing out there on the field, in the community, in your professional capacity and in your personal capacity. Are there any other public comments from individuals who we've not yet heard from this evening? All right, seeing there is none, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the board for us to have some sort of general discussion about what we've heard tonight from the community and what possible action we might want to take. And if we have questions for staff at this time, we'll direct them mostly to Carla. I'm not sure, David, if you would also like us to direct questions to you or just to sort of stick with Carla this evening, but it just, if we need some clarification on some of the questions that we might have that maybe came up this evening through public comment.
Sure. Why don't you get the conversation started, and if there's any way that I can jump in and help, and maybe after a little while, if there's some points I might want to share with everyone here, because I think you'll find a tremendous amount of alignment with your passions and my passion. So why don't I let you run the meeting, and then where an opportunity arises, I'll be more than happy to jump in and see if I can help support.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. And thank you for being here tonight. It's great to have you be part of this conversation with us. So leaving that sort of open, are there any particular board members, if you want to raise your hands, and then I'll just recognize you as chair and we can start the conversation on what should we do. Generally, as we know, there is a budget meeting that will be happening, budget retreat in the middle of March. Historically, what we tend to do as a board, as I said earlier, is put together a letter, either as a board if there's time or in our individual capacity. But this is the one time we have to meet as a board to make a decision in accordance with the Brown Act to officially advocate for support for the community. So I don't know if there's anyone in particular, any of the board members who'd like to start a conversation on what we should do based on what we've heard this evening.
I just want to make a comment, and I want to say thank you to all the people, the participants that talk. As a parent, I am very thankful for their concern and And I thank you for how they express our feelings, our needs. And it's very important that someone can hear how important it is for families, for kids to have the most appropriate help that we need. So I want to say that it's, I'm sorry, I just want to say thank you. And it's very important what they say. Thank you for the concern and thank you for helping us express what for some of us is difficult to express.
Thank you, Gloria. And I echo your comments as well for everyone who spoke tonight and everyone who's doing this work day in and day out. Your presence, your voice, your stories, your experiences, they matter so incredibly much. And coming before the board, it matters a lot to hear your stories. And I really hope to have you with us in this conversation moving forward, because even though this fight has been going on for decades, it doesn't stop tonight. So however we can support you and this community, you know, I hope that we can continue to do that together as a community. Ebenisha, you're next.
Hi, thank you, Barbie. Thank you guys so much for everything that you said. I hear you, and I just wanted to say that, you know, you said that in the past, like what we've done is draft a letter. I would definitely love to do that if that's what is our best move. For me, the topics of staffing, especially if it's going to help bring staffing for a teen center, and for family, right? Because what I've loved about living in this community, and I've lived here for a while, since 2005, but I didn't become an active member of the community until my daughter was, in 2013, 2014. And I, as an adult, had a lot of growth because of Virginia Avenue Park. So to me, like the resources for family, like Liz said and Irma was saying, as far as like all the different things that the park has been able to provide over the years, and for our teens, because, you know, right now, because of the pandemic, there's a lot of things that socially our kids was locked up, and now they're out and running. And we definitely, as a community, it takes a village. We need to do our part and provide them with a place to go where they could feel safe and they could get some counsel outside of home. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ebenisha. Yeah, I agree with you that I think the teen center is one large topic that we should make sure to include in whatever advocating that we're going to do. And also support for families, particularly those who are the most vulnerable. As Liz mentioned in what she was discussing, that and also Anahara, what we had provided before the pandemic, and now the new needs that have existed that didn't exist before the pandemic, or that have been exacerbated since the pandemic existed, that we really need to find a way to support families at levels that existed before the budget cuts came into place. Alemu, I believe you all have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, I would like to start with thanking all those, you know, advocated for our community here. As you said, Virginia Avenue Park is not only a place for, you know, resources and the support. It is kind of refuge for a lot of people living in the people neighborhood. teen center is very important to keep busy our kids, you know, instead of going somewhere else, learn bad stuff and make bad friends. They're gonna keep themselves busy doing sport or other stuff. So I had my son before pandemic. He used to go there and he loves it. And I followed there. I saw a lot of kids enjoying. So I would like to emphasize that it is very important for this neighborhood to reinstate, teen center. Not only that, as some of you mentioned, there are different kind of support programs. Say, for example, application assistance for needy people who cannot understand. There are a lot of immigrants who do not understand exactly what to do. So they don't use the benefits they could use easily and suffering because of that. So if you get, as usual, as before pandemic, services don't help, you know, young people to find a job, build resumes, as mentioned. There is a Santa Monica-based company helps out that, given a place in Virginia Avenue Park. There are other free services offered by nonprofits and you know, other organizations, by city departments at Virginia Avenue Park. So it is very important really to strengthen Virginia Avenue. As mentioned earlier, it is the only disadvantaged area of Santa Monica. So if you focus on the health, you know, Pico neighborhood, you're gonna raise the city. I'm saying that a lot of people in this area need help more than other part. So I understand there are a lot of people living in another part also want to support, needs coordination. We gotta find a way to address that too. And I really appreciate all of you for being here today. I really thank Mr. White being among us to listen to what we need here. Thank you, all of you, and I hope it's gonna come back in the, you know, we enjoy as a neighborhood and community, the Virginia Avenue Park, as it was before pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. I want to ask the other board members, I'm gonna ask you individually if you have a thought that you wanted to add to this before we come together about an action. Dr. Compton, I didn't know if you had thoughts about the things you heard or anything you'd like to add.
I echo what Gloria said as far as the way that everyone came out to support and articulate was not always easy for us who are so connected right now to articulate. I mean, we are so passionate about it that we may not have the words to describe how we feel about the support needed at Virginia Park. It's generational for many of us as far as park resources and the evolution of Virginia Park, right on with what everyone else said, Barbie. And community members, I really appreciate everyone's input. I'm a board member. I don't know, I may be on my 7th or 8th year. My son is a teen, right? Senior at Santa Monica High, and there's no teen center for him right now, right? So I do appreciate everyone's sentiment about how important resources are right now, especially post-pandemic. So everything that Benicia said, I echo, and I appreciate hearing the word diversity and think it's being intentional about staffing, really important. The reflections, and I would say we probably have one of the most diverse park boards, and I'm really proud of that. And probably the most involved parents of like all of our parks, you know, in Santa Monica. So I look forward, Barbie and board, to being a part of any subcommittee that's going to put together a draft of the letter. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Compton. Rosalinda, I didn't know if you had some thoughts or comments you'd want to add to this before we talk about action.
Yes, hello. I'm so sorry. I was listening, but I don't know. It's too many things. Yes, I was listening. I really, I'm so sad about listening to everything. But I'm so happy because, do you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we hear you.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, thank you. So the important thing is like Anna had a mom say, she always get all the words I have to say. Virginia Avenue Park, I don't know, it's like part of our family, it's part of a community, helping us in all ways. And then I hope, and I feel so like nice with everybody, talking about it. And it's good. I'm very appreciate everything like Ana Jara moms and Dore, Irma, Liz, Carla, everybody helping us a lot to be in there and then be involved. So the only I really need is the support of a community need in Virginia Avenue Park. It's part of our family. It's part of our Pico neighborhood. It's part of us. So if they need to be in there, thank you. There's no more words to say.
Thank you, Rosalinda. And Arcadio, I know that you had spoken earlier before we were able to open up to public comment. Is there anything you wanted to add to before we start thinking about the action?
Yes. First of all, I really appreciate that you guys giving me the opportunity to support the program at the park. But since it's my first time with this board member, so obviously I'm in process in understanding how you guys run this one. Probably I stepped a little bit ahead earlier, but just to thanks to all the citizens who participate and brought their inputs and concerns about the park. I heard that they mentioned several points like more inputs, more funds, more staff, diversity from different backgrounds. Do not cut any program that help the kids. Post-pandemic, more opportunity. And the city needs to create more opportunity for the kids as well as not to cut any staff at the park, which is the majority of word or concern that everyone's brought into this concern. So my question is like, what, especially Mr. White, what will be the 3 most important programs that you will implement or areas that you're not gonna hurt at the park? That's end to my point of view.
Yeah, David, if you'd like to respond, you can. Also, we are going to be inviting David to speak more formally at a future meeting. But if you'd like to respond, feel free. But no pressure. If you'd like, I think a lot of stuff is tonight.
I don't mind jumping in, but maybe I'll wait until after the board is talked a little bit, and then maybe I'll jump in after that.
Okay. I mean, I think that, thank you, by the way, every board member for speaking. I agree with you, Arcadio, in that I feel like there are some themes that came up that have been consistent tonight, and also have been consistent with some of the needs that have come to the board over the past year or 2 years, since before the pandemic, like right before the pandemic, and then increasingly since the pandemic has moved forward. I also have a daughter who's a teenager, and there are 2 things that were brought up tonight that I know resonate with us in our household as a single mom. And one of them is, nowhere to go. There really aren't safe places for, in particular, young and vulnerable teens, women or girls, and others who don't have other siblings in their home. So I know that the teen center is something that is an incredibly important part of the city of Santa Monica and of the Virginia Avenue Park. And I believe that we should do whatever we can to advocate to getting that staffed. It's frustrating is a gentle word in terms of how I feel about it not being open and operating in a safe way for our teens and for our community. I think the other thing is that we have these wait lists for our children. And having worked in early childhood education before and understanding this sort of wraparound care that the city has believed in the past, the whole idea of cradle to career, when we have wait lists for families in need and there's a breakdown in providing just those sort of that basic equity so all of our students of Santa Monica can thrive, it has huge repercussions later on in life. And we have already the most vulnerable community members who are now also going to be without the support they need to thrive academically. And it scares me to think about what that could happen, what that could mean in years forward. So those are two particular things that I feel whatever we decide to draft should address are these sort of funding needs for the Teen Center to be fully staffed and also to meet this demand that we have when it comes to providing our programs to youth from that sort of cradle to career timeline. I also think that, in addressing the funding for staffing, we could include language about how important meaningful diversity is so that the children have mentors who look like them, who've experienced life through a similar lens that they've experienced, and recognizing that the city does, include diversity is a huge part of what we believe in, but finding a way to sort of say that we really need that here. We really need our children to be able to look up to the people in those offices and feel like they're seen and heard. So those are my general thoughts based on what everyone has mentioned tonight, only understanding so much of what's happening on the budget side, but solely speaking from what the demand and the need is here at the park. I don't know
you want me to
comments. Go ahead.
Jump in and share a little bit now? It would now be a good time or? Okay. So, well, as much as my presence here tonight was a little sort of came at the last minute impromptu, I'm really happy I'm here because I think hopefully this can be a good opportunity to work together. And so when we get to the next meeting, we can certainly talk about ways that I can be a good partner to all of you and a good advocate for all of you and what our community really needs. And in reflecting on some of the comments, what I really appreciate is setting our sights not on where we were pre-pandemic, but really being focused on where we are today and where we need to be and what we really need for this community. I think that's a really important point because far too often we may want to go back to what was, but what was or what we had before may not have been enough. And so we have to really think about what do we really need to thrive. And so I really appreciate the desire to focus our efforts and attention on that vision because I think that's the vision that we want to strive for and that's the vision we want to grow into. So let me talk a little bit about kind of where we are. And it's kind of funny because earlier tonight I was expressing to the chair, I was concerned I was going to be late because I was recording the State of the City speech. Fortunately, we got through it in one take, so I was able to get here on time. And, you know, I think a common sentiment that we all share is deep frustration. And I can say that frustration comes from a lot of different angles, right? There's a deep frustration that all of you have for the cuts that occurred and where we are today, because where we are today is not satisfactory. There's deep frustration, I know, throughout the entire organization, and I'm talking about the employees, for the level of services that we are able to provide today or not able to provide today. No one I have found is very happy with our current situation and what we're providing, right? And it's not, it's across the board, right? It's Virginia Avenue Park. If our partners from the library are here, they certainly would share the beating up that they have on me in terms of wanting to get libraries back open. There's other programs, right, in the context of what we offer to the community. There's our CREST program, there's a PAL program. Nothing is operating at a level that is satisfactory whatsoever. And the challenge is, particularly in the context of Santa Monica and the recovery, I mean, you all saw firsthand how just destroyed the organization was when COVID hit. And it was multiple sectors got hit at the same time, right? It was hospitality, it was tourism, which it was our tech industries, right? Everything got impacted. And that led to some very severe budget cuts and reductions in services. And the reality is, right, just from the reality is that we have not yet recovered to where we were before, where we are today. We still have a long way to go in our recovery. The hotel industry is coming back, but we still don't have the same type of occupancy that we had pre-pandemic. When I look at the tech industry sector, right, so many workers are working remotely, which is great that they're able to accommodate that, but the reality is that impacts businesses because there's no one in the community shopping like the way that they were before. So like from the looking at the financial condition of the city, we're still in a very difficult position. All of this, right, is one factor to consider. The other thing that I expressed this in the State of the City, and I want to really open up this conversation as we talk with each other and as I'm talking with the community, is that the organization has some really big financial liabilities hanging over our head. And so I'll describe to you what those three are because they're significant. So the first one is we have aging infrastructure. And there's a parking structure in downtown, parking structure 1, that is not seismically sound. And it's going to take about $14 to $15 to $20 million to upgrade that parking structure. We have no money set aside for it. I'm not sure what we're going to do about that parking structure yet, but we're starting to have some conversations. The second liability is, which I think many of you are attuned to, is the city is engaged in a lawsuit over going to district elections. If the city loses that lawsuit, that could cost us about $20 million, funds that we don't have budgeted. The third liability, which is really the more significant of the three, that is really hanging over the organization's head, has to do with claims of sexual abuse that are tied to a former employee. So for those of you that have been in touch with reading the local newspaper, you probably have seen some articles that there are a number of folks that have come forward with additional claims against the city. Our city attorney's office is in the midst of those discussions and addressing those claims. I don't know how that is going to turn out, but just to give you some perspective, the city has already resolved more than 100 claims, which resulted in the city having to pay out over $100 million. We are currently in discussions right now where we've received claims that exceed 100 at this point in time. I don't know financially how that's going to play itself out, but that's a very significant issue. The point I want to make is, and I was very clear about this in the State of the City, and it's definitely very clear for the organization. There's two words that describe where we are today. We are recovering and we are rebuilding. And so we are not talking about budget cuts. And as we pursue how to address these claims that sit over the city's head, we're actively developing plans to address them. And one of the key principles that we're very focused on is we want to preserve services, we want to preserve programs, and we want to preserve jobs. But this is a monumental challenge that is going to sit in front of all of us, sit in front of the organization, and certainly a burden that I have to work our way through, because I'm very attuned and sensitive to the desires that all of you have to grow what you have, because I know, I spend a lot of time at Virginia Avenue Park and I see the rich programming, I see the community that comes together, and I've seen it cut across so many different sectors of our community, right? It's not just all the folks here. I was recently at an event that Carla received a wonderful distinction with the Ethiopian community. And I remember last year's Greens Festival and was out there during the holidays for La Posadas. And so I see all that's happening, and it's so amazing that I really want to be that kind of support for all of you to see those programs grow. So one of the things that I'm trying to spend a lot of time and thinking about is how we can bring forward the resources to support the organization, the community, as we continue to recover and rebuild. And I don't yet have all the answers. We're just starting to open up our budget discussions within the organization and trying to figure out where we go. And so what this meeting really helps me is to understand what your priorities are, what you want to keep me focused on as your city manager, and how I have to think about the future. I certainly would love, as we continue to build a relationship and have conversations, is really build on this notion of partnership. So one of the fruits I think that came out of the COVID-19 pandemic is the We Are Santa Monica Fund. And I certainly know that that is a group of individuals that are very eager and hungry and are looking for direction and ways to support the community. And I certainly personally believe that a lot of what is happening centered in Virginia Avenue Park could be an area where I could help provide some leadership in trying to bridge some connections and talk about ways that we could partner with that group of individuals to be strong advocates and help to raise resources that are needed. So that's really where we are today as an organization. It's a very difficult situation that we're in. It's a very difficult message, and it's a difficult place that we find ourselves in, and it's no fault of any individual, and I'm not casting any blame on any one person, but it's something that I certainly am very attuned to and trying to help figure out a pathway forward that can provide some sense of we are recovering, we are rebuilding, and we are growing. But the reality that we're certainly going to have to deal with is that there are some very serious issues that the organization is facing, and trying to figure out how to get ourselves out of it is going to take a little bit of time, and more time than I think anybody, myself, the city council, everyone on this call has patience for. I acknowledge that. So I'll stop there. Maybe that helps set some context, Chair. Certainly more than willing to answer some additional questions, but I definitely, like I said, I want to be a partner and a resource to everyone here, so we can find some positive pathways forward.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments and for sharing with us sort of the forest from the trees view of what the city's looking at and where the park fits into that. I think some of my concerns, and I just think some other board members share this with me, is, looking at that sort of budgets or statements of values. And over time, the Virginia Avenue Park just keeps getting sort of winnowed little bit more over time, because we've been so good at fundraising, because we've been so good at getting money from the business community, because we've been so good at, raising funds through some of the school relationships. I think we're hoping that we can get something more substantial from the city to sort of reclaim the value that exists in the park. And in particular, this notion of, cradle to career, which was a huge part of the city. And Virginia Avenue Park was a really big piece of that. So I'm not sure if you see that's going to be something that's going to be approached moving forward, or my concern is sort of how much more are we going to have to be relying on private fundraising for things that in the past have been city funding, in particular staffing, making sure we have consistent people for our children to look up to and to be mentored by.
So I'm certainly not as attuned to how much has been relied upon in terms of the past for private fundraising. I certainly don't share any of that to create additional burden. What I do authentically share is that our ability to grow what's happening at Virginia Avenue Park and grow other programs and services throughout the organization is going to take creativity from a lot of folks in a lot of different ways in a lot of different places. Because as I tried to frame, there's a tremendous amount of financial pressure sitting over the organization's head. So it's going to be really hard, I think, for us going forward to figure out how to well support all the needs. And so the council is going to have to make some really difficult decisions. So for example, if they want to, really invest a lot more resources in Virginia Avenue Park for all the right reasons, there will be other programs that they will not be able to invest in. And so that's just going to be one of the difficult, I think, trade-offs that's coming down the pike. Where there is opportunity, right, it's around some new tax measures that were passed, but they don't unfortunately well align in terms of what was adopted by the community. So that's going to be our struggle. So I think we are going to have to talk about how to be creative and how to partner. as we go into this budget cycle and future budget cycles to really get to the vision that all of you hold for where we should be.
Do you anticipate there being resources available through those tax revenues? I feel like as a taxpayer, I feel like I've approved a bunch of measures over time that included like funding for education or other things that could make its way to the park. I'm not sure where that falls in sort of the stream of resources that might be coming to the city.
So there were 3 tax measures that were passed. So the first one was Measure GS, which was a property transfer tax measure. And that was a specific tax that was done through citizen initiative, which means that the resources that are generated by this tax must go to the purposes outlined in the tax measure. So that tax was designed to go to the schools. The first 10 million of it must go to the schools. And after that 10 million is satisfied, then the remaining resources can go to the city, but they must go to 2 categories. The first category is homelessness prevention, and that can be used very broadly. So that's not a specific service. And then the third category that money must be used for is affordable housing development. And again, because the way that tax measure was put together, the money from that tax must go to those 3 buckets. And we are tasked with creating an oversight committee that will help guide our ability to determine how to allocate the money that would go towards homelessness prevention and affordable housing development. That tax measure will go into implementation starting March 1st of this year. We'll be very eager to see how it does, because how it does will allow us to work with folks to figure out how bold and how broad we can be in supporting those services. So again, that Measure GS has to go to the schools first, the first 10 million. Then the remaining resources can go to homelessness prevention and affordable housing development. The second tax measure that was adopted by the community was Measure CS. And Measure CS is an increase in the transient occupancy tax for hotels. And as you read your ballot, you probably saw that it was very specifically tailored to really address the community's priorities around clean and safe and homelessness. So those resources are going to be, ideally, we'll be talking with council about funding recommendations that address needs within our ability to address public and community safety, again, homelessness services, as well as the impacts of homelessness, particularly in our public works department, as well as Department of Transportation. So that tax was fairly well identified in terms of what those resources would go to. The third tax that doesn't have any sort of resources or services tied to it is Measure HMP. And what Measure HMP is it imposes a tax on businesses that are engaged in the non-medicinal sale of cannabis in the city of Santa Monica. However, the dynamic here is that Santa Monica actually doesn't allow retail cannabis in its city limits under our land use and zoning code. So we have to go to council to have them actually adopt zoning code changes that will allow for retail cannabis in the city. And I honestly do not know what those discussions will lead to in terms of the number of businesses, where those businesses will locate, and how that will be received by the community, because we haven't really started those conversations. My hope is that the strength in which the tax was passed is an indication that the community supports retail cannabis, because it was, I think, supported by over 60+% of the community, but I don't yet know. So the problem is that I don't have profile in terms of when that tax measure will actually produce revenue to the city. Other than that, right, there are no new funding streams coming really into the city with what was produced on the November ballot. And that's ultimately what was supported. We did, just so you know, we did try, because one of the things we looked at was we wanted to figure out a taxing mechanism to help support library services. So we did go to the community and asked explicitly if the community would support additional taxes to restore library services. And that did not receive adequate support. There was a competing measure on the ballot to Measure GS, which was Measure DT. Measure DT was also a property transfer tax, and that actually provided for the ability to generate revenue for a whole wider array of program and service restorations in the community. That tax did not pass. If it had passed and had more votes than Measure GS, that would have been the prevailing tax measure, and we could have had some pretty robust conversations of how to deploy those resources for a much wider range of services. But again, it failed. It only received like 45% support. So we're stuck working with Measure GS, Measure CS, and at some point in the future may Measure H and P. You know, one of the things I know that, well, I'll stop there for now because that really summarizes what we got to work with.
It's a lot. I think generally, you know, one things I wonder is with the new money coming in, is that only for new programs, or will that lighten the load for the other things in like the general amount of pot that we're looking at to access resources? Like, will other money be freed up that maybe can then be reallocated back to the park?
So with Measure GS, it's got very specific language that it can't supplant any programs and services. It's not, as much as it may fund affordable housing or as much as it may fund homelessness prevention services, we cannot use that to fund existing programs and services. It's really very clear in its language that it's designed to really augment and grow. And I would say it's the same orientation around Measure CS. Particularly, I think it would be very difficult to take in that resource and basically use it to fund existing operations to then free up that money to go to other services. I think that would be a very difficult issue. That'd be a very difficult thing to do, to be really honest. So there really isn't any money coming in to really replace what we're currently doing to then fund other programs. Now with Measure HMP, when that becomes valid, if the council and the community supports going to retail cannabis, that money has not been programmed. Mm-hmm. And so that really could go to a wide range of programs and services, which I think, you know, there's lots of reasons why that money should go to supporting programs and services that support our most vulnerable population, supports Virginia Avenue Park, supports our youth. Like, there's a whole host of wonderful connections with that that I think make a lot of sense, but we're just not even there to understand what that revenue generating potential is. And it's all going to center on how many stores are allowed to take root or grow in Santa Monica.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. I appreciate that. With all that being said, are there any questions or general thoughts from the board? Noticing that it's 10 minutes until 9 o'clock, in case we did want to come up with an action to put together a letter. Are there any? Oh, go ahead.
And sure, there is time, right? So the budget study session is not until May. So there's certainly, you know, you want to invite me back in March. And so I think there is more time to have more conversation, for sure, if that's helpful. The city council will be getting together in a workshop in March, but the actual budget study session doesn't occur until
in May, right? Yeah, that's right. It's like the budget retreat or something is the one in March where they like the study where they talk about this stuff. Plan, brainstorm, hear from community members, I think. Thank you for that, because I do think that later on in the meeting we would talk about plans for the next meeting. So I want to make sure to continue our conversation regardless of what happens tonight in terms of what we come up with for an action. But noticing that it is almost 9 o'clock, is there a motion from the floor about some steps we could take as a board, or some thoughts, form of a motion?
I do move that we create a subcommittee to draft a letter to share with the rest of the board to the city in support of park programming. And staffing and budget.
So there's a motion to create an ad hoc committee to draft a letter.
And Chair, if you want me to be available when this committee is created to sit down with the committee and dig more into stuff, you know, please understand I will be more than happy to make myself available, even the subcommittee.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, and it means a lot to know that you're in this with us. Ebenesia?
I second that motion.
Okay. So let's see here. Is there further discussion about the motion? Or should we move straight to vote? All right. All those in favor of creating an ad hoc committee to draft a letter regarding this item, raise your hands on the screen if you can. The little reaction here. There we go. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Oh, 6, Arcadio, myself, and let's see here. Rosalinda, oh, she has her hand raised. Is there anyone missing? I think Alemu. Oh, no, he has his hand raised. Here we go. Okay, the motion passes. Are there, we're allowed to have 3 board members on an ad hoc committee at a time without violating the Brown Act. Are there individuals who would like to volunteer to be on this committee to draft the letter? Here, I'll lower the hands. If you'd like to volunteer, please raise your hand. I have Shirley, Dr. Compton. Is there anyone else who'd like to? Traditionally, we've had the secretary. I don't know, Gloria, if you'd like to be on as well. Okay. And Arcadio? Yes. All right. So we have our 3 board members, Dr. Shirley Compton, Arcadio Cruz, and Gloria Garcia, who will sit on the ad hoc committee. Thank you very much, David White, our city manager, for offering to be available when this ad hoc committee meets. Ideally, we'll have a draft of the letter that we could then present to the board at our next board meeting to then move forward. Are there any other thoughts or questions or concerns from the board about this agenda item? Ebenesia?
I'm sorry, it wasn't necessarily about, well, yeah, it was. I had wondered, is it in our scope to do fundraisers? And just asking just to know what, as a board, we are able to do.
Yeah, so I think we can talk about that briefly here, just because it's I think a much larger discussion. Perhaps you can bring it up, add it to our agenda for the next meeting. But in the past, we have basically helped raise funds using or working alongside a community organization, sort of a fiscal sponsor relationship. We've done that for our scholarships for our seniors. We've also done that when we've tried to raise money for the college trips. We've done that for the putting together stuff for the backpacks when kids go back to school. Carla might have some more insight on it, but I do think it's worth us considering having an agenda item at the next meeting to talk about fundraiser options. They tend to be best done when they're tied to a particular event or program or project, because that you could drive businesses in particular, business leaders who want to be more involved and engage the community. It gives them an opportunity to see where their donations are going.
Okay, since this is my first year, I just I wasn't clear on if we could do that. So thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Sure, yeah. Are there any other thoughts or questions about this agenda item regarding the letter of support for
hello?
If you need to leave, it's completely understandable. Okay, moving forward. Discussion and possible action of board ad hoc committees. The first being the Mental Health and Community Connections Group. We met 2 months ago. We did not meet since the last board meeting, but Elemu did have his event, I believe. Is that correct? Would you like to give a report about the Ethiopian community event?
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much for bringing up. I was waiting for the last minute, and I kind of a little bit disappointed with you guys, especially VAP board members. I sent you individually emails. You didn't even respond. But I got the most important people from the city council members, Mr. David himself. We enjoyed a little program, we exchanged ideas, shared our culture and history. So it was fun. So what we wanted was we want to use this Virginia Avenue Park and those kind of different events to bring our people together, exchange cultures, know each other, and bring a unity. Most of all, make Santa Monica what it's supposed to be, diversity and unity, and find, same path, live in peaceful neighborhood, enjoy life. That's what we want. So there was an event before ours, a very beautiful event, Mexican culture. We've been there, participated, enjoyed food and also music and so on. So a lot of people liked it, and say some of our members who missed asked me to remind them when we have any similar event from other communities. So it was good, but I want you guys, especially we should be there. Board members, if communities, different events happen at Virginia Avenue from our different communities, it's very important to show up and show solidarity and give support. So people encourage, especially some members who do not see different faces, it's the same thing for them. So if they only the same community gathers, they have events in different places, So what makes different and important is to be together, to have all faces and all backgrounds there. So I just want to emphasize to pay attention for that. And thank you for everybody who showed up and participated. Thank you.
Thank you, and I do believe that according to the Brown Act, that there no more than 3 of us are to be present at the same time at the event, and otherwise it gives the appearance that we're conducting business without a full board in front of the public. So I know sometimes that's a concern, but I agree with you. Perhaps there's a way we could communicate that better so that not all of us are there at once, and therefore then none of us are there, but to find a way to at least have 3 of us there to represent the board and support the community. Thank you for that. Next, the Family College Trip Ad Hoc Committee. Do we have a report or an update? Were you able to hold a meeting in the past couple months? Yes, Dr. Compton, did you want to?
Oh, sure. So we were able to meet just yesterday, actually, and we came up with quite a few ideas, notes, possible dates. Our next steps are to, and please cut in Gloria and Evanisha. Our next steps are to meet with Carla and hash out some of the big questions we have, as well as choose for sure the university that we want to go to. So, and then we'd be able to, hopefully by the next board meeting, have a flyer and more information to share with families. But I was glad to be able to get together and come up with some really great notes and some next steps.
Great, thank you. And then last we have the Teen Center and High School Program Ad Hoc Committee. Were you able to meet in addition to what Dr. Compton said, and anything in addition to share?
I don't believe we weren't able, I don't I was not able to come, and I don't remember, and nobody else was, I don't think. However, it goes back to what is our options for teen programming if we have no teen center.
Thank you for that point taken. All right, so those are our reports. Ideally, if each of the committees could meet between now and the next meeting, that would be great. Carla in her office can help set up a conference room or Zoom if that would be easier to have. The meeting can also happen over email since it's only 3 board members, and the committees can include people who are not serving on the board, but no more than 3 board members can serve on an ad hoc committee at a time. Moving on, discussion and possible action to plan the upcoming meeting agenda items. So our next meeting is planned for March 20th, 2023. This would be in person at the park. It's the 3rd Monday of the month at 7 p.m. As we've discussed, we'd love to have David White come and speak more formally about his role as city manager and sort of what he's been bringing since he's been serving in this position, and what he hopes to do in that role, and how we can continue the conversation with the park. It sounds like we also would like to have an agenda item to include possible fundraising. Are there other items that we would like to entertain, or speakers that would like to have present at the March meeting? Okay, if not, then I think we're, oh, go ahead, David.
Is it March 20th?
March 20th, yes, March 20th, 2023. And it should be in person, 7 p.m. at the park. Thank you. And then the following,
I'll be close to home.
Excellent. April 17th, 2023. They usually are the first Mondays of the month, but in order to have a staff member present who currently is also with, I believe, with another commission at this time on the first Monday of the month, we switched it to the 3rd Monday of the month so that we could have that staff member present. And Carla could still be present, but in her capacity as the park coordinator liaison, and not necessarily as the staff person handling the procedural pieces of the meeting. Which we are grateful for. I'm very appreciative that we have staff dedicated to helping us be able to run these meetings efficiently and put together agendas and minutes. So thank you for that. Let's see here. Is there anything else from the board regarding these discussion items or regarding our meetings for March and April? Okay, if there are none, left open is general public input. If there is anything from the public that you did not get to speak on earlier that you would like to mention before we adjourn the meeting. If not, thank you again, David White, for coming this evening. Thank you to every member of the community who spoke. Thank you to the board members who volunteered to serve on our ad hoc committee. Look forward to reviewing that draft and discussing it with the board at our next meeting. With that, we will adjourn the meeting at 9:06 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for all of your input and your leadership.
Thank you, Barbie, for your facilitation. Excellent job.
Thank you, guys.